Resources and the developments. Well, students, what do you understand about the resources? First, we learn the meaning of resources. Then we will discuss resources and the developments. So let's we start with the resources with these definitions. Resources means we can see students resources everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs means which things used to fulfill our needs provided it is technological accessible means we must know how can we use it and also economically feasible means it is in our reach culturally एक्सपेक्टेबल कैन बी टर्म एज ए रिसोर्सेज जो हमारी संस्कृति और कल्चर के अकॉर्डिंग हो उन सभी चीज़ को हम रिसोर्सेज वी कैन कॉल इट द रिसोर्सेज कह सकते हैं हियर वी विल डिस्कस द फ्यू एग्जांपल्स यू कैन सी द एलसीडी मोबाइल फोन द अदर थिंग्स these are the example of resources also in our day-to-day lives we are using the different types of things to satisfy our needs. These are also resources. Well, students, we also discuss the resources. About the resources means the interdependent relationship between the nature, technology and the institutions. What is this? What is the interdependent relationship? Means we directly get the things from the nature. This is the physical environments. Here who is playing vital role? Human being is playing vital role. Means human being is also as a resources. With the help of technology, what the human will do? They create the institutions. In other word, I can say human beings interact with the natures through the technology and create the institutions, accelerate their economic development. Or you can see in our three sectors how can the humans resources are creating the resources or we are using day by day life. In next slides we will discuss the resources classifications of the resources means how can we classify the resources. Well, students, easily you can learn we can classify the resources two types. One is natural resources, one is human resources. Natural resources also classified two types. One is renewable resources or second is non-renewable resources. In the same way, human resources are also two types. Structure and institutions means which resources are created or we can say made by the human beings, and the quantity and the quality. And here we are discussing the natural resources two types: renewable resources, non-renewable resources. Renewable resources also two types. One is continuous form या continuous flow of resources. For examples, wind, water. क्या इनको ह्यूमन बींग्स क्या करता है? मॉडिफाई करता है? नहीं करता. ये अपनी कंटिन्यूस फॉर्म में होती है, इसलिए इनको रीन्यूएबल रिसोर्सेज को किस कैटेगरी में किया हमने? कंटिन्यूस फॉर्म में. Second one is known as biological means then one is natural vegetations or the wildlife. In natural vegetations we can consider forest also. This is also. And the second is non-renewable resources. का मतलब क्या? What do you understand about the non-renewable resources? Means one type is recycles means we can reproduce again. These are known as recycles. Reuse them. For examples, metal. And the non-recyclable means once we use then again we cannot make use. For example, fossil fuels. Now we will discuss more example of classification. You can see in the picture living things, non-living things. हम यहाँ origin of basis पे अगर हम classifications करते हैं resources का तो two types में कर सकते हैं. One is biotic resources, one is abiotic resources. Biotic resources related to living the things. We can say they have the lives. For example, plants, animals, human beings, bacteria. These are biotic resources. And second type is non-living things. Abiotic resources means here we will discuss the examples. You can see the water, soil, air, lights, minerals are example of abiotic resources. This is classifications on which basis? The basis of origins. You can see more about these resources. Biotic resources often from the biosphere means they have the life. We can here discuss the examples human beings. Flora and fauna means the plant kingdom and the animal kingdoms. These are the examples of biotic resources. A biotic resources means composed for non-living things, for example, rocks and the metals. I think students, you understand the classification of the resources on the basis of origin. We also discuss here examples. One is there, which is example dividing the environments. Biotic resources एक example आप देख सकते हैं, vegetation, forest life you can say देख सकते हैं, and abiotic factors के अंदर you can see water and these things are. Next term में we will discuss on the basis of exhaustivity means जो रिसोर्सेज समापन के आधार पे, यानी जो रिसोर्सेज वंस टाइम भी यूज़ करते हैं और वो रिसोर्सेज क्या हो जाते हैं, समाप्त हो जाते हैं, तो उन टाइप्स रिसोर्सेज को हम किस टाइप से डिस्क्राइब करते हैं, द रिसोर्सेज ऑन विच बेस एग्जॉस्टिबिलिटी के बेस पे करते हैं. ये भी दो प्रकार के होते हैं. फर्स्ट इज रीन्यूएबल रिसोर्सेज, यानी उनको रिन्यूएबल कर सकते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल्स we can say sun energy, we can say wind power, we can say solar power. These are examples. Non-renewable resources here, fossil fuels, coal, there are examples, but we know one day they will finish. In the next we will discuss the renewable resources means we can renewed कर सकते हैं, replenishable कर सकते हैं resources which can be renewed कर सकते हैं, reproduce कर सकते हैं with the help of physical, chemical reaction, mechanical we can say process. For examples, इस कैटेगरी में कौन से resources होंगे? Solar energy, wind energy, water, forest, wildlife, etc. These are the example of renewable resources. Also these are further we can divide into. One is continuous flow resources means water and the wind क्या है, continuous form या flow of resources we can say. Second here type is non-renewable resources means which are from our substantially long geological time means millions of years. Formation of these resources depend on the millions of years. लाखों वर्ष के बाद जिन संसाधन का रिसोर्सेज का निर्माण होता है वो किस टाइप के होते हैं? नॉन रिन्यूएबल रिसोर्सेज. फॉर एग्जांपल्स मिनरल्स, फॉसिल फ्यूल्स वी कैन यूज वंस दे आर फिनिश्ड. दीज आर कैन बी डिवाइडेड इनटू टू कैटेगरीज. इनको भी हम टू कैटेगरीज में कर सकते हैं. रिसाइकेबल मीन्स वंस यूज कर सकते हैं बट उनको दूसरी फॉर्म में वी कैन मॉडिफाई और वी कैन यूज. फॉर एग्जांपल्स मेटल्स. नॉन रिसाइकेबल का मतलब यह क्या हो रहा है? फॉसिल फ्यूल्स विच कैन नॉट बी रिसाइकल एंड वंस वी यूज मीन्स इट मीन्स दे आर फिनिश. एग्जॉस्टेड हो जाते हैं मीन्स एग्जॉस्टेड विद दियर यूज. हम जैसे इनका यूज करते हैं तो क्या हो जाएंगे? एग्जॉस्टेड हो जाएंगे, समाप्त हो जाएंगे. Here you can see the example of renewable resources. You can see that in the picture there are different types. You can understand with the pictures. These are the solar energy, we can say wind power, hydroelectricity, also rains, waters, rivers. These are the examples. In the next slide we will discuss on the basis of ownership. क्या हम रिसोर्सेज को क्लासिफाइड कर सकते हैं किसके बेस पे? बेसिस ऑफ ऑनरशिप. बिल्कुल हम कर सकते हैं. 4 टाइप्स में कर सकते हैं स्टूडेंट. बहुत ईजी है, इसको याद रखना. इंडिविजुअल्स मीन्स जिसके पास अपना राइट्स होता हो, प्रॉपर्टी होती है इंडिविजुअल्स. जैसे आपका घर है, एट योर होम, योर बाइक्स, योर बैग, योर फोन. कम्युनिटी रिसोर्सेज मीन्स कम्युनिटी ओन होते हैं. वी कॉमनली यूज फॉर पब्लिक पार्क, प्ले ग्राउंड्स. दीज आर कम्युनिटी. नेशनल रिसोर्सेज मीन्स नेशन के होते हैं, विद इन द कंट्रीज की बाउंड्री में होते हैं, जैसे इंडियन रेलवे. यू कैन टेक दिस एग्जाम्पल्स. इंटरनेशनल मीन्स ओशनिक वाटर बियॉन्ड द 200 किलोमीटर. ये जो रिसोर्सेज होते हैं कंट्रोल्ड बाय द इंटरनेशनल बॉडीज लाइक यूएन. We will discuss more about the individual resources. Means resources that are owned privately. हमको कह सकते हैं हमारी निजी संपत्ति होती है, जैसे लैंड एक फार्मर की संपत्ति होती है, प्लांटेशंस होता है, नेचर हम कह सकते हैं, पास्चर लैंड्स एग्जांपल डिस्कस कर सकते हैं, पॉन्ड्स है, वाटर इन द वेल्स है. We also discuss in individual resources, plots, house, other property owned by the peoples in the city, village, towns, your phone, your bike, your we can say these are your individual resources. Next is community resources. You can easily understand. These are resources accessible to the all members of society or community. Here in the village commons resources like the grazing grounds, burials ground, village ponds, public park, picnic spots, playground in the urban area and also the rural areas. Also you can schools, hospitals, sub centers. These are the community resources. Now we will discuss the national resources. What do you understand about the national resources? Means national resources are belong to the nations. For examples, our roads, canals, rivers, railways, minerals, water resources, forests, wildlife, etc. These are the एग्जाम्पल्स ऑफ मिनरल ऑफ रिसोर्सेज वी कैन से लैंड विद इन द पॉलिटिकल बाउंड्रीज के अंदर जो लैंड होती है वो नेशनल रिसोर्सेज मानी जाएगी टेरिटोरियल्स वाटर रिसोर्सेज का मतलब यहाँ क्या है यानी 19.2 किलोमीटर्स के अंदर ओशनिक कोस्ट के अंदर जो भी हम करते हैं वो किसी भी कंट्री की के अंदर वो प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी कंसिडर की जाती है मीन्स ओनली दे हैव द राइट टू urban development authority get empowered by the government to acquire the lands. These are known as national resources. Next one is international resources. What do you mean by the international resources? Which are regulated by the international institutions like UNO. Here we will discuss the example. The oceanic resources beyond 200 kilometer. We can say exclusive economic zone which belong to open oceans. No individual country can utilize these without the approval, without the consent of international institutions. For example, हम कहते हैं इंडियन ओशन की बात करें हम 200 किलोमीटर तक इंडियन ओशन क्या है हमारा है इसके बाद अगर कोई भी कंट्री है बिना किसी इंटरनेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस के अप्रूवल के बिना इनको यूटिलाइज नहीं कर सकती क्योंकि ये रिसोर्सेज किस टाइप के हैं इंटरनेशनल रिसोर्सेज India had to obtain the right to the mines manganese nodules from the bed of the Indian Ocean from the area which lies beyond the exclusive economic zones means under the 200 kilometer it is our property our nation's property our national resources that's why we also understand that these resources with these examples ये पिक्चर आपको अच्छी तरीके से समझा देगी हमने 4 तरीके रिसोर्सेज ऑनरशिप बेस पे डिस्क्राइब किए पहला इंडिविजुअल्स यू कैन गिव द एग्जांपल योर होम इट इज द बेस्ट एग्जांपल सेकेंड वन इज कम्युनिटी रिसोर्सेज यू कैन गिव द एग्जांपल कम्युनिटी पब्लिक पार्क्स का देख सकते हैं नेशनल में इंडियन रेलवे का देख सकते हैं इंटरनेशनल में यू कैन गिव द एग्जांपल इंडियन ओशंस यू कैन गिव दिस इज द example. Now we will discuss one more classification which is the basis of development के basis पे हम resources को कैसे describe करेंगे. These are also 4 types. First is potential resources का मतलब क्या होता है which is the potential resources means the in particular regions in particular country state the which resources are not utilized still not utilized. For examples in Rajasthan there is a lot of opportunity we can say potential of wind and solar energy but still we have not used so this type of resources known as a potential resources. Second is developed resources. What do you understand about the developed resources means the resources that have been surveyed determined for the utilizations both the quantitatively that development of the resources depend on the technology and the level of their feasibility and then we can say develop resources. Here we will discuss the examples the gold हमारे देश के अंदर हमने गोल्ड को सर्वे भी किया है डिटरमाइन भी किया है यूटिलाइज भी करे इसके क्वांटिटी और क्वालिटी की इंपॉर्टेंस जानते हैं बट हियर जो टेक्नोलॉजी है वो काफ़ी फिजिबिलिटी ज़्यादा है इसलिए हम इन रिसोर्सेज का यूज़ कम कर रहे हैं तो दिस रिसोर्सेज नॉन एज डेवलप रिसोर्सेज. Now we will discuss one more classification. Stock resources means refer to the materials which in the environment have the potential to satisfy to fulfill the human's needs but do not have the proper technology to assess these resources. For examples, water, we know the water is combinations of 2 gases. One is hydrogen, one is oxygen, you know. Or we also know that these gases are also a big sources of energy but there is problem is technical problem. Which is the technical problem? We don't know how can we make these use as a big resources of energy but these type of resources we can say it is considered as a stock. तो ये resources हमारे पास stock resources हैं क्योंकि हमारे पास टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं इनका यूज कर. नेक्स्ट वन इज रिजर्व रिसोर्सेज कह सकते हैं आर दिस सबसेट ऑफ द स्टॉक्स के एग्जांपल्स हम डिस्कस करेंगे which we have not put into the use with the help of existing technical powers, we can say technology. Know how can we use more, make the use these things. This can be used for future times for our requirements. Here, students, we know that there are a lot of water in our rivers and the ponds. We are generating the hydroelectricity powers presently, but not a larger amounts, on a small amounts. But there is opportunity. We can use these resources in a large scales. We can say this is types of resources known as reservoir resources. So we can say the water is dams in reservoir which can be used in the future generation for irrigations and also the electricity generations. So well students, in the today's sessions we discuss about the resources and the classification of the resources. We also discuss here the problems created by the indiscriminate use of resources by men, कि मैन के द्वारा प्रॉब्लम क्रिएट की गई रिसोर्सेज का यूज़ करने में हम क्या करते हैं, इंडिस्क्रिमिनेट करते हैं. कैसे करते हैं? मैनी रिसोर्सेज गॉट डिप्लेटेड, बहुत सारे रिसोर्सेज हमने डिप्लेटेड कर दिए हैं, डिस्ट्रॉय कर दिए हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल फॉरेस्ट डिफॉरेस्टेशन कर रहे हैं. व्हाट इज द रीजन बिहाइंड इट्स, कि इसके पीछे कारण क्या है? ड्यू टू द अर्बलाइजेशंस एंड द इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशंस बहुत ज़्यादा क्या हो रहा है, फॉरेस्ट रिसोर्सेज को ह्यूमंस बीइंग क्या कर रहा है, इसको डिप्लेशंस कर रहा है. Second points we will discuss here, resources got accumulated in the hands of the few peoples, means the country's resources only they using by 5 to 10% people, 90% resources are using by the 10% peoples. The society is divided into the rich and poor, means you can understand resources की अगर हम बात करते हैं तो देश के अंदर 90% resources का इस्तेमाल कौन करे? Only 5 to 10% people. और रिमेनिंग 10% रिसोर्सेज 90% पीपल करें. इसका मतलब 90% पीपल क्या हो रहे हैं? रिच है, 10% पुअर है. वन मोर थिंग्स वी विल डिस्कस हियर, ग्लोबल वार्मिंग. यू विल डिस्कस व्हाट इज द ग्लोबल वार्मिंग. मीन्स ओजोन लेयर इज डे बाय डे, ईयर बाय डिप्लेशंस इज, environmental degradations are there. Others problem, these are the due to the excessive use, more use of the resources by one person. So in the this a small session we discuss about the classification of resources and the meaning of resources. In upcoming sessions we will discuss the sustainable developments and we also discuss the resources planning. तो फर्स्ट स्टूडेंट्स वी ट्राई टू गेट द मीनिंग. सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट्स क्या होता है? इसका मतलब होता है सतत विकास. What do we mean by the sustainable developments? Means the economic development is necessary, we know that, but which is does not damage, does not harm the environments, and we also must keep in that at the same time we have to take care of the needs, the requirements of the future generations. Or this type resources is, we can say this type of development is known as a sustainable development. We have to save our earth, our environments. So here you will discuss the example of green economy. Well student, in the upcoming sessions we will discuss the resources planning and the remaining parts of this chapter we will try to complete in the next sessions. So thanks you students attending this valuable session.